Hello, everyone. Happy holidays. I hope you're all doing well and you enjoyed the Christmas festivities or whatever else you might have celebrated. I thought it'd be fun to take a break from the regularly scheduled content here and take the time to highlight some of the best games available for cheap on the Steam Winter Sale, but specifically with a focus on some lesser known and or older titles. Now, I will include some better known games here, but I mainly wanted to make a list with a lot of variety so there's something for everyone. If you're watching the video after the Steam sale is over, feel free to stick around. These are still great games that will probably go on sale another time, and they're probably worth adding to your wish list. Now, let's outline the four broad categories of games that I'll be covering in this video. So we'll start by covering 3 RPGs, and then we'll go into 2 first-person shooters, followed by 3 what I'm going to call sort of story-based walking simulators. I'll talk about what I mean by that later on, and then we'll end off with 2 puzzle games. So without further ado, let's go through the games in that order. So we'll start with the 3 RPGs. So first off, we've got the Banner Saga. The Banner Saga is an immersive, story-driven RPG that puts you into a frantic and troubled world filled with danger and intrigue. The hand-drawn, attractive art style and epic varied music really get you drawn into this game, and then you stay for the story and the compelling characters. This is a choice-based game, so the course of the game and what characters live and die is often affected by the decisions that you make along the way. I found myself immediately sucked into the world. There's a real sense of urgency to the story. You really get the impression that you're always being followed and that time is running out. The lore feels rich and deep, and you immediately get attached to the characters. I found myself wanting to replay the game halfway through just to see how my decisions would affect the outcome if I did them differently. There are a few caveats with this game. The first is that the game is really about the story. The gameplay is by no means cutting edge. The combat is decent, it's essentially just standard turn-based combat. And you should also know that a big bulk of the game is watching your caravan move from settlement to settlement, making decisions about the social issues and conflicts that will crop up along the way. I personally enjoy this mechanic, but others might find it tedious. So this is really a role-playing game to pick up if you really like a story character-driven game, rather than one that is focused on having, really advanced combat. In my opinion, an asking price of only $5 for this game is a steal, considering how much care and effort went into the game and the world that they've crafted, and I find myself immediately hooked and wanting to play the next 2 games in the trilogy. Okay, let's now teleport back in time and talk about Spiderweb Software. This is a company that's been around for decades, making isometric RPGs, and some of the games they've made rank as my favorite classic RPGs. Now, their series that I'm most acquainted with is the ennaforge series, which, damn, even looking at these games really does bring me back to my childhood. The plot is that you're part of a mysterious class of people known as Shapers, who are able to summon creatures of various sorts to fight for you. In the first game, you crash land and wash up on an abandoned Shaper island, and discover the mystery of why the Shapers left. The story and lore in this game is surprisingly rich. I found myself immersed in the world of ennaforge while playing. Now, understand that this is an old school RPG, so don't expect the cutting edge. This is really for someone like me who has a weird obsession with and loves classic RPGs, and if you're in that class of people, then this really is a must play. I think the Steam reviewer summed it up best. This game is only 45 megabytes and it is far better and fun and deeper than the things we call games today, an unironic 10 out of 10. Now, the only annoying thing here is that for some reason Steam only sells these games in a bundle. It'd be a lot better if you could buy the first game for $1 or $2 and test that out before investing in the whole series, but I guess that's how it is. You could also check out the other Spiderweb Software games on Steam. They have the Avernum series, which I haven't played, but it looks very similar to ennaforge, and knowing Spiderweb Software, it probably is. And then there's Nethergate Resurrection on sale for only $1. And yeah, this game is absolutely beautifully ancient. But anyways, let's move on to the next game. So next up we have Stardew Valley. Now this is by no means a lesser known game. It's pretty well known at this point. I'm throwing it in there just because I'm incredibly addicted to it at the moment. So forgive me if many people already know about this game. But if you don't know what it is, it's essentially a cutesy role-playing farming and life simulator, I guess is the best way to put it. But it's got a surprising amount of depth and content. Now, I have to say, the look of this game originally seemed too sort of childlike and silly to me, but I couldn't have been more surprised and wrong about that. Stardew's not only engaging and fun, it's incredibly addicting. There's a huge amount of, like I said, content and depth, and it really sucks you into its world. The core parts of the game, like fishing and mining and farming, are actually incredibly satisfying and rarely feel menial. And plus you've got all sorts of other parts of the game to explore, like slowly building up your relationships with villagers, hitting on your desired partner, discovering rare artifacts and secrets, and slowly rebuilding the town's community center and following the story of the town, just to name a few small parts of the game. It's got this impenetrable, ineluctable charm to it that just makes it incredibly endearing and impossible to forget. and it's also perfect as a multiplayer game, and you can host farms with up to 4 people on it. I would call it basically the perfect girlfriend game. So definitely check this one out if that sounds interesting. So let's now move on to first-person shooters, starting with a game that's pretty much the polar opposite of Stardew Valley in every single way. When you're tired of farming and relaxing and you're ready to move on to some intense action, this is the go-to game. Dusk is an absolute blast of a first-person shooter. It's essentially an homage to some of the classic FPS titles like Doom and Blood. The game consists of you cutting and gunning your way through a bloody horror nightmare with rock music blasting in the background. It's fast-paced, it's satisfying as hell, and it's packed with secrets, so you've got plenty of incentive to slow down and replay levels too. I'm sure you can pretty much tell if it's your sort of game from the clips you're watching here, but if it is, then definitely pick this up because it is as good as it looks. Okay, next up we have another chaotic first-person shooter, and this one's something of a cult classic, and that's Postal 2. Now, the premise of Postal 2 is that you're just a normal guy going about your daily business with increasingly more menial tasks to do. You have the choice to do them peacefully and normally, or you can just cut your way through everyone to accomplish them. This game's sort of a meditation on the monotony of life, and it's an excellent source of catharsis during times of stress. One thing I love about this game is how unabashedly nihilistic and borderline absurdist it is. There's something about the style that says it just really doesn't care. At the same time, the game's a bit deeper than it seems. At a time when conservative activists were railing about the so-called negative effects of violent video games, Postal 2 was basically a big F you to them and the general cultural ethos of that time. Because it's old, some of the satirical social commentary is dated, but much of it's actually still relevant. Now, as you can see from the footage, the game isn't for everyone. It's a very much an acquired taste, and you should be able to tell from my description and the shots of the game whether you'll enjoy it or not. But if it seems like your sort of thing, it's definitely still worth playing, even though it's so old. Okay, next up are the walking simulator story games, which is what I called them at the start of the video. Now, these are games where it's really about the narrative and the story going on, and you're just sort of walking through and observing it. You're not really interacting or strategizing all that much. It's really about immersing yourself inside the story of the game and letting it unfold, almost like reading a novel but in a video game setting. So if this sounds like your kind of thing, you'll definitely like these next 3 games. If not, then feel free to skip this section of the video. Okay, first up we have Beginner's Guide. Now again, this is a walking simulator, and if that didn't immediately turn you off, then you'll probably love this game. The game takes you through a series of small games that were never published, all created by an individual known as Coda. This is one of those games that will be better the less you know going into it, so that's all I'll say about it. Just know that it is beautiful and it tells an emotional and deep story that only gets better the more you think about it. Okay, next up is What Remains of Edith Finch, which is a compelling, tragic, mysterious, and beautiful narrative story-based game that I really want to say almost nothing about because it's best that you go into this game knowing very little. I'm only showing you clips from the very start of the game. Just know that it's only a couple of hours long, but it's worth every second along the way, and it's a very, very interesting story to become immersed in, and that's all I'm going to say about that, so definitely check that one out. Next up is Oxenfree, which is another narrative game that's a bit more interactive than the previous 2 games, but is still primarily driven by the story, and this time it's about a group of teenagers who go to an island and experience some mysterious sci-fi happenings. It's got a really cool, looming, interesting atmosphere, and one thing I love about this game is how realistic the dialogue feels between the teenagers. I remember starting this game after finishing Life is Strange, which is a game I do like. It's another story-driven game, but I remember thinking the dialogue in that game reminded me of what 40-year-old French game devs think teenagers sound like. And this game felt much more real, and you actually felt like you were conversing with real people, which I thought was a very, very cool element. So again, if you like narrative-driven games, this is another really cool, mysterious one to check out.
But the thing with Ren, it was so real. It was like I was there with him. Maybe we should go back.
But I'm sure he's fine, so let's finish what we started.
Okay, so we're now on to puzzle games, starting with Aer Memories of Old. Now, Aer Memories of Old is a simple but surprisingly wonderful game. It follows a main character's pilgrimage to a place called the Land of Gods, where you go to save the Shatter World from shattering further. Far more importantly, however, you can turn into a bird, and this ability is easily the most fun aspect of this game. From the moment you step outside, the world is opened up to you, and you can fly through the colorful islands as you please. This game's world begs you to explore it, Little story details are hidden all over, and the game's quest is quite open-ended, not to mention there's a truly fantastic soundtrack that accompanies your flights. To make things better, the flight mechanic feels simple and satisfying. Don't assume that flying around like a maniac is the only thing this game has to offer, though. The lore and design of the world is surprisingly deep, and I found that I invested myself quickly in its story. There are also puzzle and platformer dungeon levels that can be found on the islands. These aren't especially difficult, nor is the game especially long, but for such a cheap price, only $1 on sale right now, the game is easily worth your while. Alright, why not end off with an indie classic, and that's Limbo, easily one of the best puzzle games I've ever played. The game has incredibly simple controls, and yet the physics-based puzzle and platforming quickly becomes both entertaining and challenging. It very often throws new mechanics at you and combines them to create very intricate puzzles. Beyond just being a great puzzle game, Limbo has an exceptionally designed atmosphere that makes the player feel alone and dark in this brutal world. Despite having almost no music, the game's sound design is near perfect, enhancing the already beautiful game to become practically a work of art. The story is as puzzling as the gameplay. You never really get a direct explanation of anything going on, but it's filled with symbolism and other hints. The only criticism here is that the story is almost too obscure, and for that reason I'd recommend reading the one-sentence description of the game on the Steam page, as that's the only solid lead you'll be given as to the extent of what happens in the game. Overall, though, Limbo's a fantastic game that any puzzle game lover should play. Alright, so I hope that was a little bit of something for everyone on that list and you could find something of interest to you. Please like and subscribe if this video put you onto any games that you're now interested in or if it helped you in any way, and comment and let me know if you want to see more videos like this in the future. I don't normally do content like this, but I saw some great games on the Steam sale that I wanted to highlight. And in conclusion, I just hope you're all having the happiest of holidays. I know we live in uncertain times right now, and I hope that you're all making it through it. So just stay strong, keep gaming, and I will see you all next time.